Are you ready, Sandra?
Yes.
Okay. Joel's ready? Okay. Good morning, and we're going to do our annual budget work session. And we're going to go over our revenues, expenses, and pretty much the budget as we've done for the last several years in that same format. So I'm going to turn it over to Alicia Searcy, our Finance Director.
Good morning, Commissioners. We're going to do things a little bit different than we've done them in the past because we've made a couple of changes in how we're accounting for things, and I think it might be better if we review those changes up front so when you see them in the general fund, you'll know what to expect. But first of all, let me kind of tell you what the assumptions are in this budget, or the numbers that we use just on some of the big categories. So this budget is projecting an 11.6% increase in health insurance. It's projecting a 5% increase in property and casualty insurance. It's projecting a 3% increase in salaries, and we are moving the solid waste expenses into an enterprise fund. We've always had the enterprise fund, but we've paid the convenience center expenses out of the general fund in the past. We're moving those over to solid waste. And there also in this budget, we're looking at the possibility of subsidizing 911 from the general fund for the first time in our history. We have not seen revenue growth in the 911 fund to support the amount of expenses if we want to do raises. So first of all, I've got the 911 budget, and that's used to we just jump straight into the general fund, but I would like to go over the 911 budget and the solid waste budget and then start into the revenues and expenses in the general fund. So in 911, we are expecting a small growth in the E911 wireless. The wireless prepaid revenue is pretty flat, so we're not seeing any growth there. And the bottom line on the revenue, you see that operating transfer from the general fund coming in of $188,300 to give us a total revenue of $3,086,750. Now, in the 911 budget, we are increasing wages by 3%, and we do have health insurance. There's not an increase in health insurance, but we've had some changes in coverage in 911, and we're running below budget right now. So even with an 11% increase over where we're running right now, we should still make the same budget next year.
Do we know from the state level some of the politics of talking about Next Gen 911 and the different things and how the revenues could change or revert over to the state? Do we know how that could possibly impact us, or is that not a concern for 27?
It's not a concern for 27, I don't think. I haven't seen any legislation. I have heard about legislation that the state is talking about taking all of our wireless and 911 receipts and keeping them within the state, and then it would be up to the county to fund all of the cost of 911. And maybe, I don't know if at that point we come up with some user fee where we share the cost of running the 911 center with the other users. But I do not think that legislation passed. I haven't seen anything that indicated that it did. So for now, if that changes, obviously we would have to change that in the budget.
Right.
So we get those ACCG emails. Sometimes it's a lot of emails,
Right.
and then it's always 9 o'clock on Friday mornings. They'll have an update. So at this point, no, that's still, with the session just ending, ACCG has not put everything quite together yet. I would anticipate with the, not the convention, the, whatever they're having, the conference they're having next week, more will come out. But you're right, at this point, it's still, I don't think legislation passed either at this point. But I think the funding was to bring everybody up to equipment-wise. To do next gen is the texting.
Right.
And so I think the state's got to get their system up, or nationwide, the entire state's got to get some of their stuff up in order for us to then function too. So I'm with you. I don't know how it's going to get paid for yet.
I would ask that if you have an opportunity with some of our state representatives to have a discussion on what kind of impact that's going to have on Carroll County, and ask them to find other revenue sources to fund that equipment as opposed to taking our 911 fees, because that would be a hard,
That's a $3 million budget adjustment.
yes,
Yes.
It's not a $30,000
no,
adjustment.
it would be painful. So, as we go on down, I added a couple of lines in 911, just so we could get a closer vision on what it takes to run the facility. I added a joint cost line, and that would be the cost of finance, IT, and human resources that we would allocate to 911, because we're providing those services for the 911 fund. So in the past, they had paid us for those services through another line item, and we took that out of the budget. So I'm putting that back in, but it'll be a true allocation. So we'll keep up with our time and expense that to them on an actual cost basis. And then I also added a line for insurance on the building and equipment. That's always been paid out of the general fund. I think that it would be appropriate to move that funding to the 911 fund, even if we have to transfer the money back in from the general fund. That gives us a better idea of what it's costing to run the 911 facility. We've increased contractual services for increase in contract maintenance. Motorola is going up again, as they always have. We're not exactly sure what that amount is. They have not given us the renewal amount, but that's an estimate that we feel like may be close. And once we get that, if we get that early enough before we present the final budget, we'll adjust that number too.
Lisa, I got a question on the Motorola, and I'm sure I know the answer to this because they've been around forever, and they probably the only one. But is that the only player in the game that, if it ever got to the point we could go out and look for someone else, or is it just?
We could look for someone else. We would have to totally buy new equipment.
That's what I felt like.
So once you lock into that Motorola equipment, then you're locked into those
I
service
knew that's what it
agreements.
used to be, but I
Yes,
just wanna make sure.
it's still the same, and our WARS radios are all on Motorola,
Yes.
which was a decision that was made many years ago. And I do think Motorola is probably the top
Oh, I agree. I do.
company.
Just
but-
curious.
But they charge to be the top
Yes, they do.
company too.
Alicia, like you're right there at it, but like under vehicle expense versus training, so if we have 15 employees over the course of a year that go to training and they each spend $100 in gas, I'm just making that number up, are we applying that back to like vehicle cost? Are we putting that in the actual cost of the training as a reimbursable, or where would that hit?
If they use a county vehicle, then it's going back into that gas and oil, and there's no funding for mileage at that point. If they go in their own vehicle, we are putting it in the training line. We could break that out, but most of the time they're going because we bought a new vehicle for them to travel in comfortably. And so most of the time, they are going in a county vehicle.
Okay, I was just curious, nothing, just where you're applying it.
No, and that does look different in some of the other departments because you've got a travel line and you do have a training line. And most of their training is done at Gypstick, so there's accommodations for them there too, for sleep, so they don't have to have hotel. All right, now we're going to move through the solid waste budget. And this is where we had a lot of changes. We've got the tipping fees, which are going down because Carroll County is no longer going to pay make sure I got this right. All right. I'm sorry. I had this in my mind, and now I'm questioning myself. So I took Carroll County's tipping fees out of here. Let me work through this, and if I come back to this, this may be something I have to change going forward. I've got the annual passes that we're going to be selling estimated at $600,000, and I took the number of parcels in the county that did not have city services and took about half of those times $50, and that's kind of where I came up with that. So we're looking at about...
So that's 12,000.
Does that seem reasonable?
You know, you've got, what, 50-something thousand parcels. Oh, yeah. I mean, it sounds conservative, so yes.
Okay. Because some of those are in cities, or probably half of those are in cities, I'm guessing. And
most municipalities have mandatory trash service. Not saying they still wouldn't utilize our centers sometimes, but yes.
right. And I think there will be some people that live in the cities that will utilize our service, but they don't have to. So that'll be a choice that they can make if they want to.
Well, and then you don't know in the county how many people might go with a private service.
Right.
So, yes, this was I think when you and I were sitting there trying to figure out, it's a guess, but that's what, we just have to,
Next year, I can give you a better idea.
yes, we'll know next year. But this is why, we were having that discussion about how we're going to sell passes, because if you had a 12,000 people buy a pass, and we give them enough time, so that's our future discussion, that you had asked to pass for a couple months, because we do need to think through to make sure if 12,000 is correct, or even if it's 8,000 or it's 16,000, we really need to think through how we're going to make sure that citizens purchasing passes have a positive experience. So, but this was, a guesstimate for the short term.
And then we had the 3% increase in salaries here. Now, we are requesting to move a part-time person to a full-time person in the office. We've got one full-time person in the office now and a part-time person, and we're open 6 days a week. So it's hard to have 8 hours a day over 48 hours a week of coverage when you've got sick time and people that can be out. So we feel that there would be better service in the office if we had 2 full-time people in there. We've increased the health insurance and the other things related to salaries. Now, when you come down to, there's a $500,000 increase. That's trash hauling that used to be in the general fund. So that's the hauling from the convenience center to the transfer station. And that's why I took out the tipping fees for Carroll County, because solid waste is now picking that up. The general fund will pay a portion of that coming out of that transfer line. We go down to rental expense. I took out that rental expense since we're trying to run this. The rental expense included shared expenses in addition to rent. And I broke the insurance out. The new building will be paid for partially with insurance proceeds and partially out of spliced. Then we go down to convenience center expenses. I brought those back into this fund because we will pay for those out of this. And then I increased utilities just because of the increase in size of the building. We increased gas and oil because we added another excavator, I think, or loader, another big piece of equipment that'll be burning fuel out there. And so overall, we saw an $847,000 increase in expenses, but $900 of that was related to money that came from the general fund, with a reduction of $240,000 of money that was going back to the general fund. So it just cleans this fund up.
And there's nothing in our contract that we're expecting of convenience center fees to increase, the salaries to increase. I know they're not our employees, but anything that would adjust that line item.
I haven't heard anything from them on that.
Under the convenience center expense, what all does that entail? Is that just a contract with SLM or what?
It's the contract with SLM, and then it's the utilities to run, so water and power, any maintenance, building maintenance, equipment repair and maintenance.
Okay.
So if a compactor breaks, you would pay for it out of that line item.
I think this is a more true picture of solid waste than what we've seen the last couple of years, because it was in the general fund. Breaking it down this way is more detailed. We're all getting a better picture of what does trash in Carroll County cost.
Mm-hmm. I don't know if any of y'all have been out there to the new building, but I just swung through there, and the lights are pretty cool. So when you start in the building, like just walking, they just cut on as you walk under them, kind of thing. So that's going to be a cost-saving measure, so the lights aren't on all the time.
And the utilities might not go up, because I think that's probably got LED lighting in it,
Yeah.
and the
Yes.
old one had mercury vapor, the old lights anyway. But I thought it would be better to put some money in there in case it did increase. I'm just guessing with the square footage, it's going to increase some.
Mm-hmm.
All right, we'll move to the general fund. I took our current year expected revenue and moved it to the 27 budget. I didn't really project any increases over this year except for in one line item, and that's the local insurance premium tax. And part of the reason that I did that, one is we've seen pretty large increases in that each year. But we'll see in the expenses where the state of Georgia is now going to take 2% of that insurance premium tax and keep it. 1.5% of that will be paid to the POAB, and 0.5% will be retained by the state of Georgia. So I felt like if we were confident that we would get an increase in premium tax, that we could afford to project that to help cover the cost that'll be retained by the state for that.
Did they say why they were?
Well, the POAB is the retirement plan for public safety.
Mm-hmm.
And they have been looking at ways to increase that funding. That covers our sheriff's deputies, jailers, the people that work at the prison, and the 911 operators. Now, it also includes state-level employees like State Patrol and other law enforcement with the state. I didn't get a good reason. Only the pressure of law enforcement to improve their retirement plan, but why they decided to take it from the county to do that, I'm not sure.
Right.
It seems to be that's their answer for a lot of things, is take it from the county.
It is their answer because...
Seems like it might be their easiest answer for them, it looks like.
Yes, because there's 7 of y'all, and our citizens don't understand how this works, and we've called it unfunded mandates for years. But our citizens don't understand when this happens, what impact it has on us or them as a taxpayer. And so that's an easy way for the state to take money and fund things that they want to fund without giving us the option of raising our hand for it. And
And that tax was designed to come, it came from the state years ago down local to help pay for things like fire service and stuff, was the whole idea behind it, to
That's
help
correct.
the actual funding.
That's correct.
And then you start chipping away at that,
Yeah, it seems
Commissioner
like-
Bailey's point, but yet salaries, equipment, I'm just talking in gist of everything to operate that we're expected to fund at a local level certainly doesn't decrease or flatline.
Right. And that's, that's what we've used it for, is to fund our fire department. And it doesn't fully fund our fire department. The fire department has a $12 million plus budget. So, but it funds half of the fire department. And so that's what the county has always used that money for. And so now, again, we're seeing money taken from us to... And what I did is I don't know if they're going to withhold that money and we will not recognize it as revenue, or whether they'll send the money to us and then we have to send the money back to them. So I accounted for it as an increase in revenue and an increase in expenses. We'll have to see how they bring it down to...
Sounds like we're becoming the tax collectors for the state legislature.
Well, they collect the tax.
Yeah.
They've always collected the tax, and then they sent us our portion of it. How much they held before, I don't know if they got an administration fee or there seems to be a lot of 5% fees.
I think what it is that we as citizens pay taxes to the county, and we pay state taxes, right? And so no elected official wants to raise your taxes, correct? But expenses and things that we all want cost more money. So the state, if the tables were turned, would we do the same thing? Would we be then pushing things onto them? So at the end of the day, the taxpayer, we're still paying for all this stuff, whether our money's going to the state or our money's going to us. It's just giving us less money down here to pay for things that they want, the citizens
It
want.
doesn't look as bad on them because they're not collecting from the taxpayer, they're collecting from us. And
That's
they're letting
right.
us collect it from the taxpayers to make it look bad on the government.
That's what I'm
You
saying.
said it. Thank you very much. I was trying to be diplomatic with our elected
The
officials.
bottom line is, we're still collecting the tax. That's where it all goes. That's what the bottom line is. Well, just like Danny said. You can run it in a circle any way you want it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Still
Yeah.
paying
And
it.
Yeah.
as it runs through the circle, they keep reaching into the circle.
And I would be willing to suspect that circle is the most inefficient way of ever doing anything. That's just my
Yeah.
2 cents, so.
Yeah,
Possible.
but do you know, I'm just curious, are there municipalities, do they have are they doing the same thing with the municipalities?
I think it's across the board, but I don't know that for sure. But I think that all the local insurance premium tax, they're taking 2% of it regardless of whether it's a county or a city.
Okay.
So like I said, most of the other revenue lines are pretty much based on what we collected. The property tax is not. There is some construction growth in our tax digest, even though it's very small.
Or, did you change pages?
No, I'm at the top. I reverted. I went back to the top of the first page.
Okay, all right.
Sorry.
Got lost.
You know, the property tax can be a situation where we could help fund the increases that the county sees, especially if we could see some industrial development in the county, which we haven't seen a lot of recently. So that kind of takes the burden off the household property tax, even though as long as we maintain the millage rate, they don't see an increase anyway. And my assumption here was that we would have a small rollback, but probably not a full rollback because of the lack of growth. So that'll be something we'll have to look at as we move into setting the millage rate. But I don't even have a digest at this point, so it's hard to put a finger on that number.
Yeah, our goal is like the same as y'all's, to only take as much taxes as we need to provide the citizens what the services they want. That's why we've been so good, and I appreciate working with y'all the last several years. We've done small rollbacks, we've done just keeping it the same, we've done no increases, but at the same time been able to provide the same services and even better services. So that is our goal when Alicia and I are sitting here talking through this, but some of it we don't have the answers this early in the day, as early in the budget season, but just at least trying to get y'all on board with where we're going.
On the City of Villarica, you see a $100,000 increase. That is the increase per our TAD agreement.
Where is that?
That's on page 2, about a third of the way down.
Okay.
And that will, for the board's refresher, that has been increasing by $100,000. It'll go up to $500,000, and then once it reaches the $500,000 in FY28, it will remain $500,000 from there on out until in perpetuity until the TAD is paid off in Villarica. That was part of the negotiation that we did with Villarica,
Right.
because essentially Station 9, while it services an entire area, it is predominantly servicing the city of Villarica, and our current service delivery strategy that happened many moons ago did not provide for the municipality to pay toward fire service. And so we felt like with a municipality that size, if they weren't providing their own fire and depending on us, they needed to somehow compensate. And so that was part of that negotiation there.
Then we'll move to page 3. There's not a lot of increases there. We are seeing a few decreases. Recreation's going to be pretty flat. We've got some reductions there, but overall, I think they'll probably end up pretty flat. The use in the parks has gone down, particularly camping, and so we've seen a decrease in our revenue at the parks. And I think we're working on some advertising or putting some things on the internet that can help with getting more exposure there for people who are looking for places to camp.
Now, the gymnastics program has actually gone down, because that used to be a really...
Well, that's gone down because they're not hosting the state meet this year.
Okay.
So that number, the prior number, it's not a participation.
Okay.
I should have clarified that. It's
That's
not a
fine.
participation reduction. It's the fact that I think we hosted 2 state meets,
Okay.
and had really good
Turn-
revenue
Okay.
from that coming in.
Well, that was the question. How much of these changes is increase in revenue from the parks? I mean, we're going down. We went from 365 to 310, and has their revenue, we're having to still put money, I guess I'm having trouble formulating this question. I was up late last night. Has their amount of money that they're taking in, has it increased?
No, it's decreased.
It's decreased?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, we had seen strong increases in the parks.
Maybe due to
Through COVID, after COVID.
Yeah.
Last year, it flattened off and decreased slightly last year, and then this year, it's continued to decrease.
Okay, so this budget this is based on how much money they take in, and then you're just assuming they're gonna take in about the same amount of money.
Yes.
This is not coming out of tax collections?
No.
Okay,
This is revenue that people pay when they
Okay.
enter the park to camp, to the gate passes, any other things that they pay for when they're, with any service that they get within the park.
okay, good.
Do we know if we have
That's where I was
and I know we can only spend so much time on these items, but do we know if, and some of this is to be expected, like you said, COVID, a big influx, I get it, and no one ever wants to leave where they're peaking, but sometimes that happens. But are we doing surveys for individuals that camp or different things? And while you may have everyone say, hey, I want to see putt-putt, and that doesn't mean we want to invest then to put that in, but if everyone's saying, hey, we only come half the time we used to, or not at all, or X, Y, and Z because of this or that, it may be something. I just want to make sure it's not anything that we can pick up on a survey that could be affecting, probably not, or it might not be, but a minute adjustment. But I just think anytime you have a consistency with revenues that are slacking off, we need to do everything to reinforce. And then if we're doing these surveys or we're doing internal marketing for ourselves, and then we realize, okay, well, we think we're doing all we can do, we don't need to leave any stone unturned and just only assume because it's certain, because of a lack of societal changes like COVID. We're coming out of that era, and so now there's not as much demand, whatever the reason.
Yeah, I don't know if we're doing those surveys.
Well, I think $3.65 a gas, or $3.65 for a gallon of gas, and you're driving a camper that gets 8 miles to the gallon, that's probably got a little something to do with it.
And I would agree with that. There's also studies that tell just the opposite, staycations, to say, hey, we can't afford to go to Florida to the beach this year because it's going to cost us $500 just in gas. I'm being dramatic.
Yeah.
But we can go in the camper and stay a week here and do different activities that we'd never have to leave the same campground.
Yeah.
So your point is valid, but also the flip side of that, sometimes you can see the direct opposite when fuel prices go up. Sometimes your parks are actually inundated because they're doing more local things that doesn't cost as much to travel. So it can go either way.
Well, I know yesterday McIntosh was full of tents.
That's good.
I mean,
So-
tents are good.
Well, what you're not seeing on here too, so we just got Kent as our full-time partner, but like over the last 2 years, what you may have saw as revenue was some of the events we were doing in the parks. You know, people were coming for the trunk or treat, you know, some of those things, you get that. You see the revenue up here, but then over here, it was costing more than the event was bringing in, which there again, sometimes quality of life stuff we're willing to subsidize, but it was getting where it was getting, what we saw over here on revenue was becoming higher over here. So
That's a good point.
some of those events we've quit doing because of the expense was not quite bringing the turnover or to providing the service we want to provide. So at this point, Ben started looking at those things. Now we've got Kent in trying to figure out. Remember, we made some things like our people using more RVs than tents. So now that we have someone really paying attention full time, I think by this time next year we'll see a better picture of that.
Okay, and then we'll go down to the next page.
But I will ask Kent to double check all this.
we're getting into the court fees here. We're leaving the state court fines flat. Civil cost in court has gone down a little bit, so we're making an adjustment there. Magistrate fees are actually up some, so we're going up there. And then recording fees in the state court have gone up slightly, so we're going up there. Probate court fees are going down. I think this is the second year in a row that they've decreased. Everything else, I left the interest the same. It's like every other year when we sit down to do this, well, what are interest rates going to do? Well, some people think they're going to go up. Some people think they're going to go down. Some people think they're going to stay flat. I think they probably will go down a little bit. I don't know that it's going to be enough to impact us as long as we maintain our fund balances close to where we have them now. I think that we'll be okay with that. And then when you go down to solid waste rent, I've taken that out of that revenue line. So we looked on the solid waste budget and saw that it came out as an expense, and then I'm taking it out as a revenue there. So to balance the budget, we're projecting $853,000 in use of fund balance. Now, last year we projected $1.1 million, and we're going to see enough revenue growth that we will not have to use $1 million. We will not have to use any fund balance to at the end of the year for the operations of Carroll County. Now, we will have to use fund balance for the purchase of the Shot Spot building, and we will do a budget amendment for that, but we will not have to use any for the operations of Carroll County. So even though we projected use of fund balance last year, we're not going to have to do that. Is there some room for revenue growth that's not in this budget? I think so, because we were pretty conservative in how we built our revenue. But that's what we've got right now to make the budget balance. So if we don't want to do that, then as we go through the expense budget, you need to think about things that you're willing to take out on the expense side so that we don't have to have that use of fund balance right now.
And that amount was how much?
853.
So we're at like
49.
6.5 months, which I know you always ask, Clint. So we're at 6.5 months in the fund balance. And like I said, we did this last year. I just wanted to be upfront with y'all that I felt better to say, hey, we might need fund balance than to look at you next March and say, oops, our budget's not coming in right. We need money now. So to go kind of ahead and put it in there, because you're right, we're trying to forecast at this time for what this time next year is going to look like. And I just didn't want to end up sometimes having too much extra money next March that we could have used during the year. Does that make sense? It's not like we're saving and then we're going to go on vacation, or we're saving and we're going to buy something new. There's some investments in this budget we're bringing to you that I just hated to leave out. That said, if you choose to leave out, we'll go with it. But I'd rather have put them in and let you decide. But we wanted to make sure like we did last year, we said we might need $1 million in fund balance. We have a good, healthy fund balance. Now, how does that set us up for next year? If we were to use this, then next year we're in the hole. We got to figure out where some more revenues are coming in. So this was just to say there's some things in here I think are important. You may see differently, and we'll move forward with that.
Alicia, under state court fines, and I know that there's a lot of things that we're looking at in the court, the ability to collect fines and so on and so forth. You flatlined that there. Do we feel like, I guess we've had one full year approximately of having that second state court in operation. I know we'll continue to look at that, but one thing that I like that Judge Hubbard did there is he really went through and did a complete not an overhaul, but a revamping and looking at every single line item of where their fee structure is, how do they compare with other adjoining jurisdictions on things that they're charging for filing fees, whatever that may be. I wonder if we're doing that in all of our other courts as well, or if that's something maybe we should ask, just to make sure, not that we're saying we want a money grab, but there were a lot of things when he went through and looked, there were things that we were just a third of the price of everyone else, and it made no sense that we would be that much cheaper. So I wonder if we could ask our other courts, whether it's probate, juvenile, whatever, public defender fees, whatever, and I know that's a little bit different, but just making sure that they have looked to make sure they are competitive, so to speak, in the market, for lack of better terms, in all of their fee structures.
Good idea.
Yes, we can ask for that. So first up is the commission office. The only changes there are the increase in salaries, increase in health care, and then the related expenses there. We're not asking for any increases outside of that. Elections department. This is another one that's hard to put our finger on. The state had talked about making changes within the elections department, and I think there's even a lawsuit now that's trying to change some things. I don't think that we know whether we're going to have to, after July 1, whether we're going to have to do paper ballots and count each ballot. If that is the case, then we will be looking at a significant increase, probably about $50,000 in election expenses. We have offset some of those costs because the state's using a company called No Ink to handle the printing and mailing, and that's less expensive than us doing it in-house. So the fees there have been offset. And I've moved those expenses they were in the postage line, I've moved them down into the election expense line. But as we find out more about how they're going to handle elections after July 1, we could be looking at an additional increase of about $50,000 in the elections department. Right now, we just have the increase in salaries and benefits associated with that, and some small increases in telephone, publishing and advertising, association dues, and contractual services to handle the increase in the cost of the contracts. And we reduced the computer equipment because we've got spare parts on hand now. It should carry us through this year, so we felt like we could decrease that line.
And that department too, I mean, they never know. There could be a special election that no one's going to foresee. I mean, there's all kind of stuff that goes on that,
That's right.
that you never really know.
Yeah, that one's hard to put your finger on, especially when you don't know all the components going up front. In the general administration, we did the pay increases, and we also have added a part-time person. We're asking for another head at the new building. Part of that person will serve to do the mail and handle things coming into the building, and then the other part of their responsibility will be work in the IT department. So we're splitting a person between the general admin and IT. We're also had to increase the internet cost for that building over there because of the amount of internet that we'll be bringing in there. I took the utilities down a little bit because I'm moving 166 Independence Drive is where the public defender is, and so I moved those expenses into the public defender. It's hard with a new building to know if you're going to have increases in utilities, but I think with the new lighting and the efficiencies of that building, and with the budget that we have, I think that we can bring that building online and be okay.
Where are you going to reallocate? What line item are you going to reallocate this building to then for utilities?
This building, it'll probably stay in general admin because that's what that building's in. But
Well, I guess I'm not following you. Why would the utilities go down if we're adding a whole new building, knowing that this is either going to stay in our budget or it's going to go to another line item?
well, I don't know what the use of this building's going to be, but I can look at that again.
I mean, I'm not challenging you. I'm just saying.
Yeah.
I agree. But I think it's as the county continues to grow, there's so much happening in the courts, even with the fifth floor build out. I can see them constantly, if nothing else, using this room, even if it's not all the offices. So,
Well, right now, we're running below budget for this year.
so part of your adjustment is real-time numbers, not just,
Right.
Okay.
But I can take another look at utilities and,
Well, if the courts decide to go back and start doing things in here, that would come out of the courts budget, wouldn't
Well, it's still,
it's still general
it?
admin.
That's still under general
Yes.
admin?
That
Yes.
building is under general admin.
Dang,
I know, that's our building.
trying to find
Remember,
something.
I know. Well, and then remember, they'll be moving out of 997, staff moving over here, and that building's just not as efficient as this one's going to be. So,
And my guess was that the 997 would move to the sheriff's office.
yes.
If they elect to use it. If they don't, I guess we'll have another decision to make. All right. We've increased the legal budget a little bit. We're going to go up on their hourly rate a little bit to get a little closer to what they need as far as their services are concerned. Under IT, we've got an intern for $3,300, and then we've got the IT specialist. Now that says 50,000 plus benefits, but we're sharing that person, so I added some money into that temporary labor to cover half of that person. And health insurance for them went up pretty significantly, but they had a change from single coverage to family or spouse or something that caused them to go up this year. In computer services, we're having to change our website, and this is required by statute.
Another unfunded mandate.
To become ADA compliant. So we're having to add some options to our website, and that's going to increase the cost of the website. And then they've asked to add another membership, which will help them learn more about cybersecurity protection. Tax commissioner, outside of the regular increases, asking for more training for the deputy tax commissioner and a new queuing system that they've ordered to go in the new building that will work differently than the old queuing system. I don't know exactly what it does, but she's putting a new queuing system in the new building anyway. Office supplies, they asked for a pretty big increase there. They're running higher than they should as far as office supplies are concerned. Tax assessor, basically we just reallocated about $17,000 to increase some computer equipment. They've got some older computers that they need to replace, and to increase their telephone expense to cover where they are as far as actual, and then the increases in benefits and salaries. Risk management, we're looking at probably about a 5% increase, and then I increased the building value for the new building, and I took out the cost of solid waste at 911. So that's how I came up with that increase, and then an estimate of about 10% on the auto insurance. Now, the amount that we were talking about for the insurance premium tax, that's shown in the contingency because we don't exactly know how that's going to be handled. So we increased the contingency to cover what we thought that would be, which is about $150,000. If they do it this year, we've got the money to do it with. If they don't do it this year, then that money's in contingency. It'll just roll into fund balance or help offset cost of other departments.
Do you have any idea when they're gonna make that decision, how that's gonna go?
It's probably been made. I haven't read the legislation to determine when that's going to become effective.
But that 1.2, that would overly balance the budget, correct?
I'm sorry?
The 1.2 would overly balance the budget, because right now we're looking at only using 8 million, or 800,000.
Right. So 150,000 would come, bring that 850 number down. Superior Court cost, we're reducing their supplements because of the increase that the judges got. They agreed to take a reduction in the supplement paid by the county. They have asked for 36,000 of that to go back to training and travel to conferences and that kind of stuff. They've asked for $10,000 per judge to get that to $40,000. And then they asked for an increase in mental health services. I don't know that there's a specific plan for that, but that's what Judge Simpson had asked for, so we increased that. And then we have also added maintenance for the audiovisual equipment that we installed in the building for each court, and Superior Court's amount on that was $4,000. Oh, that's part of that contractual, part of the $60,000. Part of that's Solution Z, and I didn't break those amounts out, but I believe he asked for about $30,000 in mental health. Is that what you recall, Chairman?
Yes, I was going to say, so the $36,000 for training, there again, the state has cut their budget. They were paying for judges to go to training, so the state cut that. So that's why I put this in here. And then he wanted $30,000. Clint, you went to that 2-day thing. I was only able to pop in and pop out. So there, Judge Simpson is doing things with a lot of people in the community. That's why he wanted to keep some of that funding to bring groups together and to work on mental health in our area. So,
and one thing, if I could just add about that Judge Simpson put together, while the topic is mental health, one thing that I noticed is any organization or government is big and convoluted, regardless of the amount of citizens you have. There's a lot of courts, a lot of support systems that are involved every single day, and mental health is only one component of it. Getting everybody in the same room and reinforcing what one organization does, what another one can't do, what one has the ability to do that isn't being asked to be done, all comes back to helping streamline operations. So while it's mental health, and I agree, there's also a lot of practicality of our courts operating well together, and there's some costs, to put that together. Carl Vinson Institute came out and kind of led the charge on that. So I thought it was extremely beneficial for Carroll County as a whole, outside of just the mental health component of the topic.
What was $30K of that used for again?
The other 30,000 is a maintenance contract with Solution Z to keep the audiovisual equipment that we installed up and running and serviced.
And we talking about the audiovisual stuff in each courtroom, is that what we're talking about?
Yes, and this is just for the Superior Court. There's also money in there for the other courts too.
And just out of curiosity, that's something that can't fall under our IT that we're not capable of, or have the ability to do?
Well, some of this is like software updates and
Okay.
that kind of stuff.
All right.
Now, some of it is the installation of that, and with our current IT staff, we can't do it.
Okay.
Now, it could fall under IT if we had more
Had to-
staffing
okay.
available. We would still have to pay for the software updates and that kind of thing, though. Clerk of Superior Court, the only ask there is for employee raises and the increase in benefit cost. The district attorney did not ask for an increase.
And I want to, I know that was a new circuit split. It's been a learning curve for everybody as far as how the funding was going to look for that. But I do want to applaud the district attorney, Ms. Sarah Japour, that she's come in and done everything she can to operate under what that budget was put together. And not that we don't want people to ask, that's not what I'm insinuating, but she's really tried to come in and get her feet grounded and learn and try to move from there. So I appreciate all the efforts that she's done, because that's a hard job to come into, and especially not to just come and say, hey, I need more resources. She's trying to do everything she can with what she has, so I appreciate that.
Well, and I did look at how we're funding the DA and the public defender compared to how other counties around us are funding, and we're doing a good job as far as giving them adequate funding. I think we're right up there. In fact, we're funding more than Cal-Eda is, and a little bit more than Troop. So I think we've done a good job in giving them the resources they need to do their job too. State court, they need an extra version of Office 365, and we're still fighting the battle with court reporters and fees. They're hard to come by, and to get them, you have to be paying the most amount of money. So we're increasing the cost for court reporters. We're running behind budget in that line item this year, so I think that's something that we need. We're also seeing a large increase in the number of cases that need translators. So we've got an increase there, which again, this year, the budget is running behind. Now, overall, the state court's okay as far as their budget's concerned, but those two particular line items are line items that they're running behind in. An increase in postage, they've just got number of pieces going out have increased. We are reducing the cost in that contractual services. That's where the extra judges were being paid from that we were utilizing to help. Now that we have 2 judges in place, we should be able to reduce that cost. And then we have the cost of Solution Z going into that. And I did not include the amount for Solution Z on that. That is probably about $15,000 because there's 2 state courtrooms. There's 4 Superior Court rooms, so it would be about half of what Superior Court is.
So is that going to affect the negative 16,000?
The negative
Yeah, that makes-
16,000 includes the increase. So
Okay.
we would have taken 45 plus 15 and then subtracted it to get down to the 28.8.
Okay.
Solicitor, The state did approve a pay increase for the DA. The DA's pay will go to 175. Our charter calls that for us paying the solicitor 90% of the DA's pay. So the solicitor pay will go up as well as the regular increase for employees. She has moved two full-time positions to part-time positions. So I've increased the temporary labor and decreased the salaries for those two people, and then we've taken out the insurance expense for those two people to reduce the cost of the budget there. And then she's seeing an increase in her postage line too. We did add $3,000 so she'd have some money to buy some new computer equipment with, and increased office supplies to cover the trend there. Magistrate Court, we've got increases for the salary increase there. The health insurance went up a little bit more. There was a change in coverage from a single to a family, so that increased, their health insurance increased more. And then they've got an ongoing workers' comp situation that's requiring more funding in that area for right now until that's resolved. Also an increase in postage there. An increase for training, and then the Solution Z increase was $6,875 for the magistrate courtroom, and then increase in office supplies.
On that Solution Z, I know that's on each courtroom. Is that something that's bid as a whole, or do they do it individual courts do it? And
no, it was bid as a whole.
okay.
So they did the installation, and
That's kind of,
they've got it's kind of like that Motorola thing.
yeah.
Or we can not do it, and then we can pay them by the hour,
Yeah. Okay.
and buy the contracts.
Right.
Probate, the judge has asked for an annual pay increase to $160, which is about a $33,800 increase. And then we've got the regular increases for the other employees. Increase in Social Security to cover the salary increases. And then the Solution Z AV maintenance in that courtroom. Juvenile court, judge also asked for an increase there. He was willing to do the increase over a 3-year period. So we've increased his pay to $7,000, not to $7,000, by $7,000 for 26, and then we'll see another $7,000 in 7,000 for 27, 28, and 29. So, and then his regular increase. His health coverage, somebody changed and took a lesser coverage, so he's running below where he was last year, so I've taken that down a little bit. He needs to add some cost for guardian ad litem, as he's seeing more children that need representation in his court. And then in contractual services, he wants to add a licensed professional counselor to provide case planning and consulting to the court, and then that Solution Z, which was about $6,800 maintenance in his courtroom.
Hey, one question backing up to the probate court, is that increase of 33.8, is that something that's could possibly done over a period of time, or is that something that just want to do it one?
The board can do it however you want to. I think it's negotiable.
Also, is
Just a question.
the increase based on like just compared to other judges in the same position? Is there a basis on the increase?
Yeah, 80% of the Superior Court pay.
Okay.
That's where it came to. Now, her salary is set by statute, so this increase would be an increase to the county supplement. And her current supplement's about 24,000, I think. And so this would increase her supplement.
You want to weigh in? I was going to ask.
To about
Avery,
57,000.
Because I know we've been working on this on the side, because we discussed this, I think, maybe at the retreat or something. The legalities with supplements and things like that citizens might not understand, or how we navigate these. So do you mind weighing in?
Sure, and we talked about this at the retreat a little bit, and the ACCG guests that we had with us kind of weighed in on their thoughts on it as well. But we're working on crafting some language for that supplement, similar to the way that it's crafted for the Superior Court judges at the state level, that if the state comes back next year and increases her base pay, that the county's supplement will remain the same or decrease over time to keep her pay at a certain level, which is what the Superior Court judges did when the state gave them that raise. Our supplement decreased, and as the state increases theirs in the future, the county supplement will decrease in the future for the Superior Court judges. So we're working on some language for the supplements in this case to keep them very similar to that, so that if the state gives a big bump next year, which the ACCG folks thought may happen in the next year or two, then the county's supplement will go down accordingly.
So would that be in place by the time we put this budget in place?
Yes, yeah, we'll work on that language, and we'll have them.
Well, if you approve, that's right, if you don't approve it, there's no sense doing any
That's right,
paperwork.
yes,
If
right.
you approve it, Avery will continue to work on the paperwork for all of us.
Yes.
And so the documentation you're working on is just going to handle what you brought about and those points, but what was asked of the budget, the number was derived from 80% of Superior Court pay, but that is not what, regardless if we agree to this number or half of it or whatever total, that's not the documentation you're preparing, that's just where the number derived from. Because a lot of times we go back and think, okay, how did we do something, why did we do something, and we say, well, what was going on at that moment? And so regardless if we gave this full amount, half of it, none, whatever we do, I don't want there to be conflicting expectations or conflicting understandings of how the number was derived. If we want to base it on, anybody can ask for anything, but
That's right.
if we want to base it on, we have looked at other adjoining jurisdictions, this is a constitutional officer of the county, and we weigh all that in on what that number is, I feel comfortable with that. What I don't feel comfortable doing is leading on that we are adding a percentage because other things are set up with other judges, because the last thing we want to do is now play the state, and we're adding more burden on ourselves of the expectation where when everything else goes up, we're going to adjust everything by percentages. Even if we want to do that, we don't want to set the precedent of that's what we're doing is now creating another level of bureaucracy of a percentage of a raise each time. Because anything that we're not mandated to do by the state, we don't need to be incurring more convoluted measures for ourselves. So that has nothing to do with what the total number ends up being. I just want to make sure that whatever the number is, we're being clear about how we're arriving to that number. And in my opinion, I don't think it has anything to do with Superior Court, and that's just
Okay.
me.
So you would.
And I'm
like
not saying
to
I'm
say
even
no?
against the number, I'm just
Great.
saying I'm against the idea that we're now going to set the supplement based on a percentage of
understand.
Superior Court.
Okay, so you are, you're right, because if the state decides to give the Superior Court judges $100,000, we're now locked into that too. So, would you like me to reach out to the probate judge? Would you like to see what other counties of our side, or what's around us? Tell me what you'd like.
She has all that prepared.
Yeah, I've met with her myself, and she's provided that. I mean, I'd like to see us come up with a number.
Okay.
I know she's not had a raise in several years. I think it's incumbent upon us to look at that, and I have no problem providing that. I don't know about that particular number, but I'm fine with doing something. I think it's just going to be a conversation of where does the board feel comfortable.
And I met with her yesterday and seen the same stuff. I guess my concern is just the perception of giving nearly a $34,000 raise in 1 year. You know, we did talk yesterday, but I'm not going to get into that now. So I'm a little more leaning, not that I'm against this, but I could be a little more persuaded to go along if we do half now and half next year. I don't know. That 34,000 at one whack, it just doesn't, for me, it's just
The way I understood it is that she was stripped of the mental health supplement, I believe, is that? So she,
I don't know, I'm sorry to say I have not had that conversation with the probate judge.
Yes, so she was getting $1,000 a month. Accountability, judges over accountability courts get $1,000 a month supplement
And then-
to handle that accountability court.
Yeah.
And so she is no longer the judge for the accountability court, so she no longer gets that supplement. But that was just a supplement.
that's right.
For handling that court. So
Correct.
now that she's no longer handling it, she would not get that supplement. So, and I think Judge Palmer was very gracious in that he does think that the juvenile court judge does need to make more money, but he was not looking for that for himself. He's planning to retire in the next 3 to 5 years. And he feels if Carroll County's going to get a good juvenile court judge, that we need to have our salary in a position to be able to attract somebody. And he was willing to do that over a 3-year period. Now, his salary's not set by statute like the probate judge and the magistrate judge, because he's not elected. It's set by the Superior Court judge. And the Superior Court judge that could come and say, hey, we want the full $30,000 this year. But they didn't, and Judge Palmer didn't, and I thought he came up with a good way to help us work that into our budget without it being a big hit all at one time.
So we advertised this budget in May 2nd, but we all know that the reason we advertise it, it could still change by the June meeting, because the idea of advertising it so the citizens have a chance to see it, and then they can come to our public hearings and weigh in. So just because we advertise it May 2nd doesn't mean it's perfect. So are y'all comfortable with maybe asking Clint and Danny to work on this on the side, to having heard what you've heard from the commissioners, maybe going back and meeting with the probate judge and maybe having further conversation and maybe come back with a suggestion for us to put in the budget? Now, this may not happen by May 2nd, I recognize. It's definitely going to happen by June. But maybe, are y'all comfortable with some, and then we can always have we have a tentative date for a second work-through on this. You know, some years we've needed it, some years we haven't. And if this is only one item, we can always have that discussion, you know, right at a work session or something. But are y'all good with appointing these two just to kind of go back and have further discussion?
Okay.
So right now, we've built in the 80%, but how we get to that dollar amount or what dollar amount we put in there, you're right, Clint, we do need to have not a whimsical number, but there's thought process. So this time next year, we know how we got there, or 5 years from now, another board is wondering, we have a documented way of how we get to things.
So this way we can compare apples to apples
Yes.
and not just comparing it to another court. Because like you were saying, we don't want to tie it to another court based on what they're doing there. We need to tie this court to this court. and
Gotcha.
Other courts like it.
So that's more of what y'all's instructions are, is to figure out how to tie it more to the job itself, not necessarily somebody else's job.
Yep.
Is that a good assumption on my part to make, and Alicia's? But we'll leave this dollar amount for right now as the highest amount, right? Not to exceed, right? Okay. Thank you for that direction. I know, okay, so juvenile court, are y'all okay with the way he's not tied it to any court? I think Tom, in the conversation I had with him, was more based on, again, attracting a good talent to run our juvenile court system.
You know, I really have a lot of respect for Judge Palmer, and I think he's wanting to leave his court in good hands. I have mixed emotions about it, because I sit and tell myself, what do I tell an employee that's been here for 30 years that we appreciate you, but when you're going out the door, we know we can't find anybody of what we've been paying you for the last 30 years, so I'm going to have to bump you up. But in the same note, I understand exactly what Judge Palmer is saying. I have been a public servant, and I hope the next one is too, but you got to get in real world numbers. I brought this up about the chairman's position before. If you look at the amount of employees and organization, internal organizations and stuff that have to work through the office, that position is not funded well at all if you look at that. So I get it, but my point is it's more than just one. And so I have mixed emotions about it. I also think about this as a public servant position, and I also think about, are you laying out the salary before you even look at the resumes to see what the qualifications are? So it's a balancing act. I'm not saying this is wrong, but I'm also not saying this is 100% right either.
Well,
So, and I don't know where that number,
Right.
where it balances out, but it's a harder discussion than just, you need to add more.
Yeah.
So the next person coming in, well, what do I tell the employee that's been here for 30 years? What do I tell them?
And to your point, there is a base salary for all positions. I mean, you start at a base salary and you work your way up based on longevity, you know what I'm saying, and service on the job. And again, this is a public service, a public office that's serving our citizens. So I kind of agree, before you just lay out, we're going to automatically give an increase. You can't just look at, we're trying to attract somebody, because when he goes, somebody is going to throw their name in the hat, period. It's going to happen, okay? I don't think we're going to be without a judge. And I think base salary is, I think that's what should be in place. But I also, like we said about the other, I think these salaries should be based on similar courts and not tied to anything else. We can't tie it to, we just want to get a good person in. But, I mean, you're coming to serve the public. That's just part of it. And for me, I get that conversation from constituents all the time, you know, why is the judge making that much, or why are they making that much, or why do y'all just give that? You know what I mean? Because they don't understand all of this with how we pay a supplement, and then how the state pays the judges. Like they don't get that all the time. They just get that final number, and then they question us about it. But like I keep saying, I think we just need to have a clear-cut way of how we do things, and how we fund these positions, and how we give the raises, so that we can honestly say, hey, this is just how we do it, you know.
So this judge is appointed.
Gotcha.
They're not, this one's not elected. This is appointed, and the board, I believe, has to agree, and then we fund it. So this one's a little different than an elected position. So I don't know if that changes your thought process or not, but.
really.
Okay, I'm just making sure that this one's,
Gotcha.
you're right, you're sending your resume in to the judges, and then they choose, and then we fund.
Oh.
So, but not an elected position by all the people, but you're right, I guess. So I just want to make sure that if it changed your mind.
Well, we
One
have,
one thing I want to add to it also is, going along with what Clint was saying, it is a public service position. And for somebody that spent 20-plus years doing that, 15 or better here at the county with the fire department, I went into that job knowing that it paid what it paid. And you done it because you loved it, because you cared about it, and you done what you wanted, that's what you wanted to do. So, not saying the job's not worth that, but that, being a public service, does have to count for something. That's what you knew going into. Not that raises shouldn't come along, but I don't think we should get to the point to where we're trying to make those public service jobs compatible with what the private sector is either.
And if you look here again, not saying that this isn't something to try to work toward, but if you look at how we have structured other incentives at the county, we have modeled that the last several years around what does their tenure look like. And yes, you could have an employee that's been here 10 years and they're not the greatest employee, but the idea is if they've been loyal, they've stayed here, the idea is that they've helped grow with the county and help it flourish to service the citizens. So when you do something like this, sometimes it's going against, on face value, what we've tried to set, I think, a precedent of this board in general is that tenure does matter. Tenure should be rewarded in some certain way. So I think all this is good, constructive conversation. I think we can find a balance somewhere.
I do.
Okay, so how do we want to handle this one? Do y'all,
I would like to see just the compare, I haven't seen the comparable numbers on juvenile judge for Carroll County versus counties similar to our size, because I think that's ultimately the, flatline effect is just like our fire department, just like our sheriff's office. We have to be,
yes.
like, we're not trying to go to the private sector cost, but we're just trying to be comparable to surrounding counties and counties of our size, so that we don't lose good talent. I mean,
We need to be competitive, but we need to set a baseline too.
correct.
So, can I put Montreal, can I put you and Ben meeting with Judge Palmer and having that discussion and coming back with something based on what you've heard here that would, you think, be something the rest of the 7 of us could agree? Can I just put the 2 of you in that too?
Well, I think Tim, aren't we missing something here? I mean, we have wiggle room in here when we go to hire somebody.
Yeah.
We have wiggle room in the budget. We can come back and say, okay, if we're gonna have to pay this amount for this person, period. Or we're not gonna get that person. So we can come back and meet and move. You can change. This thing's not written in stone.
No, I think Judge Palmer was just trying to be cognizant
I know
of
what he was trying to do.
trying to help us over 3 years, not to get a money surprise in 3 years, so that conversation, so that maybe it didn't go the way, maybe his idea of preparing us is not so good now, but
Well, that would
the
all
thought
come back- It would all
process.
come back to this body on how much we're gonna pay a judge or pay anybody. So what I'm saying, let's not lose sight. We can change this, or this body can change this budget to what it needs to be if we want to hire the right person.
Okay. I think Leisha, you and I've got some direction for the short term.
And depending on how the groups go and how we're structuring that, let me know, and then we can structure the language appropriately for however you're coming up with the number.
Because these contracts, we sign contract, yes.
Right.
Thank you. Thank you, Avery, so let me put that in there. So I'm going to let Ben and Montreal work with Judge Palmer and Avery, and I'm going to let Clint, I'm asking, I'm asking y'all to work with Judge Haney and Avery on what you think we all would be agreeable with.
I guess when we're talking about that too, magistrate court judge did not ask for any changes, but when we did the probate judge supplement last time, we did the same supplement for magistrate court. So do we want to take that into consideration in what we're doing with the probate court? Do we want to keep that consistent, or do we not want to address that at this point?
I mean, I go back to comparing courts to courts and not tying them to another court. That's how I look at it, and setting a base for each court, and then we just operate from there. But I see what you're saying, and me personally, as I would look at this, I would not forget about them. I would just think about it from a holistic standpoint of how you adjust the system, and you have these opportunities for raises just built in for each court. That's how I think about it.
Well, in probate and magistrate, their pay structure is similar in that once they complete a term, then they get a percentage increase.
Yeah.
Which covers that longevity to a point. Whereas with juvenile court, you don't have that same pay structure. So the structure for juvenile is really different than probate and magistrate. But I just wanted to throw that out there so that we're not forgetting anything. And if we don't address that at this point, that's okay too, but
I think
And
why don't we
other-
just tie that in as a secondary instruction for Danny and Clint and Avery, y'all to look at.
And the other thing with the magistrate judge is that the magistrate judge has the option of being a private attorney as well and having a private practice. And the board has tied the supplement in the past to whether that judge is full-time and not doing other work, or whether that judge is doing other work. So the magistrate judge currently isn't taking the county supplement because she has her own private practice.
I'll just let y'all just kind of review that on the side, just so we don't forget about it or.
And I think it would be important, all these subcommittees that are working together, not that everything, as Commissioner McClendon pointed out, has connected to the other, but we do need to make sure we work closely with Avery, Mr. Jackson, because they do all have certain state requirements that we may not be aware of. And we also want to make sure that we're not bringing something that was grandiose for one and then not for the other, and trying to balance what that all looks like. So I think the subcommittees need to talk to one another as well, is what I'm saying, outside of just who's on each particular committee.
I agree.
Okay, so thank you for 5.
Okay, we'll move to the public defender. I added building repair and maintenance for the maintenance of the building out there, and then the utilities for the building that they're now in. And she has asked for an increase in their telephone expense and their office supply and expense. So that's included here.
And I want to say publicly too, I know there were a lot of people involved, but like Davey out at Public Works, how they went through and revamped the old magistrate court for public defender to have nice offices, which is where some of this conversation originally began with Commissioner Fuller and McClendon and myself, and we said, why are we renting a space for them? That's where a lot of this talk came about, of building out the 5th floor and different things. I know now they have a practice room in there. And regardless of what you think about the law, there is a prosecution and there's a defense, and both have to be able to equally go about doing their job in the court of law. And so seeing them have a decent place over there where the staff can work, and knowing that we did so much of that in-house, is something that I'm very proud of for the county.
That ends the court system. Do we want to take a short break
Oh, yes, thank you for asking.
and then get started into public safety?
So it is 10:34. I'm going to give y'all, is 10 minutes plenty of time to, okay, so we'll cut recording. Start again. Okay, we're back from our break, and we're going to start with the Sheriff's Department.
Okay, in the sheriff's department, we've got one big change there as far as head count's concerned. They're wanting to put together a 5-year plan of increasing their labor force for needs to service the community. And this year, they've asked for 2 additional deputies and 1 additional investigator. Those would be new positions. We have the cost associated with that, and then the cost associated with the health insurance. Medical services, those are services that are rendered to people who are coming into the jail or who are in jail. We are required to give them medical services, and we're seeing a continued increase in those costs. They've asked for a $15,000 increase in computer services to help cover the cost of the software for the flock cameras. And we have increased the K-9 expense just because dog food's more expensive. Increase in vehicle repair and maintenance due to increase in parts cost. And then an increase in utilities to hopefully cover the cost of 997 if they move in over there.
Alicia, you're pretty good at coming up with these numbers, but one thing, it might be good to talk with the consultant that we hired. I would think as many buildings as he's done, he might be able to give you a pretty good number. I mean, this number may be accurate, I'm just saying.
You're talking about the guy at the sheriff, or the sheriff's office?
That we hired for the construction,
Eric,
our owner's rep.
Okay, yeah.
I'm just saying he ought to be able to take the blueprint now and the new and have enough experience, him and his staff, to come up with a good number.
Okay.
on the salaries, do we know what just the cost of the 2 deputies and the 1 investigator is as far as just the salary part, how that breaks out of the 449?
Probably 160.
Okay.
And then you'll have a little bit of overtime cost in that too. They get built in overtime every other pay period.
And the sheriff, he'll be coming to our retreat next February to really show us the 5-year plan. This was just a start on it.
Okay.
Danny, you weren't on the board. I think, Tommy, you and I, Clint, I believe Montreal, we were on the board a couple of years ago when, and now fast forward, 5 years have gone by really fast.
Yes.
So we will
Okay.
be bringing y'all an update.
And we'll move to the Correctional Institute. They have asked for an increase, well, Correct Health presented their contract for their medical services, and it was up 2%. We're also allocating their internet cost to them, and they have asked for a $20,000 increase for food supplies. Now, their utilities are down. They have installed new faucets throughout the prison, and they're motion activated. So their water cost has decreased this past year. So we think their utilities will stay flat.
Does the state automatically dictate what they send us per inmate, or is there a lobbying group that lobbies the state to say, hey, these expenses have gone up and this is what you need to be reimbursing per inmate, or do we know?
The state dictates that dollar amount. Is there a lobbying group? I think so.
Yes.
I think the wardens join together and ask for additional funding.
Correct.
And
That might be a way that we could, not that it'd be individual to us, but while we're getting stuff passed down to us, if we can find new ways to
Yes,
get back.
yes. The wardens do the best they can every year, but there again, some of this would be helpful for us. You know, next year, if our legislative body has that meeting again where we met with them before, we probably need to be a bit more organized. And, you know, ACCG gave us our talking points, right? Which is a lot of what these things we're talking about today that we need for our county also. So we might need to convene a little bit before then and realize what we definitely need to ask our legislative body to do or not to do.
And just an aside on that too, is that the county attorneys that represent like jails and correctional institutions get together and we try to get the Attorney General's office to handle the habeas corpus cases that we get. They're state prisoners, and we think that the state should handle those cases. However, the Attorney General's office attempts to put that back on the local county attorneys to handle, even though we have no idea what they're in there for, what their original charges were, what they were involved in. You know, the state prosecuted it, they're state prisoners, the state should handle it. So if you're ever talking or getting a discussion with the legislators on this topic, please remember to bring that up, because we're fighting a losing battle on that.
I'm going to make a note on my calendar in August to recircle back with all of us to really look at what we need to talk to our legislative body about on a more detailed. We rely on ACCG, who does a great job for us, but maybe we need to even hone it in closer to what that means to Carroll County. So I'm making myself a note for all of us.
Okay, we move to the fire department. They're asking for an increase in computer services and breathing air maintenance. They're trying to be more vigilant on their compressor maintenance, and that's an increased cost there. And then just increased cost in parts for equipment and vehicles. They've added a line for publishing and advertising to do a safety publication to go out to the community. And then they've added a little bit in travel for conferences. The big increase is to the Carrollton Mutual Aid line, and even though our number of calls have gone down that City of Carrollton is helping with, Carrollton's budget went up by about $900,000, so that's why that line item went up, is we share those calls based on the cost of them running their fire department.
So as we don't mean to interrupt you, but as we move through that, that's one thing. So what is the justification if the calls is up and the price is going up, the call volume is down? How are they basing that and come into that?
Well, it's based on their budget, so it's what they're paying, you know, their pay increases to their firefighters, and then a lot of that's based on the new equipment that they've put into place. So you got a ladder truck that they paid $900,000 for, and the new one cost $1.4 million. And those are just numbers that I'm throwing out there. I don't know what their exact costs are, but their depreciation went up for sure.
So is our fee to them, it's based on call volume, correct?
Correct.
And so how did we?
So you take their total fire budget divided by the total number of calls that they run, and then multiply that times the number of calls they run for us.
Is that the way and you may not know this, but is that the way it's always been? Because it seems like it's changed, because if we do it on that formula, to me, then it doesn't matter what we negotiate per call. They can increase it again because this cost of it's all like me getting paid on gross margins versus net margins.
Right.
They can control those numbers, and we have no say-so in it, so we can drop them and cut the call volume out, which we've tried to do over the years. But if they just increasing what it costs per call volume, we're not gaining the ground.
And that's exactly what happened here.
Exactly.
I don't know.
So a couple of years ago, it was just an arbitrary number, okay? And then we met and sat down and tried to come up with a black and white, there again, why we have an answer, why did we come up with this number? So that was negotiated, and you're right, now this time we're seeing, as their costs go up, we're having to pay for that cost, not saying right or wrong, and I know Dave's trying to work on things, but with us not having coverage in that area, this is not mutual aid. This is,
I
yeah,
know, yeah.
right. So anyway, you're right. At some point, I don't know how long that contract is good for, but we might need to really, and I know Dave is working real hard on, we've had conversations. I guess hindsight, we didn't realize expenses were going to start going up like they did. Okay, so, we do need to figure out as a county how we're going to provide for our own county.
And just from a personal standpoint, that supplement has always been something that is just really,
I know.
Proud.
You're right, but if we don't have the coverage, we have to pay a
I understand
service.
why we have it, we've always
Yeah.
had it, but to me, it needs to be based on, and, you know, we went back, and that was a big thing, I think, several years ago, where we said, well, we're gonna go do it based on call volume. Well, we've cut that call volume down, restructured how we dispatch out, to do
Yes.
that. But whatever we're doing, we didn't gain any ground because they charged us more per call, is what it basically boils down to.
We didn't pay more, but we hadn't, yes. So Dave's working on that now too, because what does that mean, another fire station for us? Does that mean and I think he and I've talked about the ladder truck, but there's more to the ladder truck, like where you store it.
Yes.
To me, I didn't realize you can't just park these things outside because of the cold, the water freezing. I mean, there's things I didn't know, because I was just like, why not buy another one and park it without having to build a building?
that's simple.
So there's things I am learning that I didn't know before, and so these are things that Dave is exploring for us on how do we, but that requires more people on our end too. But you're right, it'd be nice if we can provide the service we're supposed to provide without having to rely on someone else.
Well,
So-
it's not as simple as just building a fire station, because that service district is to the south end
Multiple
of
zones,
town
yes.
and
Yes.
the north end of town. So you could have to build 2 fire stations, or maybe 3, and then you've got the cost of manning those 3 stations. At the end of the day, we may be getting a pretty good deal.
Well, we are, and don't mistake what I'm saying. Yes, what it would cost us to cover what we needed to is gonna cost us a lot more than this. But I guess what I'm saying is, just because their cost goes up, it shouldn't reflect on us when they're running less calls on it. There's gotta be some kind of, there's gotta be, and I'm sure Chief Wade
He is,
working diligently on it.
trust
We've
me.
had conversations about it, but it's just.
Yes.
Well, and like with West Georgia Ambulance, we put a CPI limit increase on them.
Yes.
So, you know, maybe next time when we look at this contract, we build in some restriction. It can go up. It has to go up, because they're gonna pay their firefighters more and more and more, just like we are. But maybe we set that amount tie that to something so that they can't just randomly go up.
Yes,
Well, and
it's gotta be
to
tied.
Commissioner Bailey's point, the way it sounds like the terminology's written is nothing against them, and I know they're not buying frivolous things, but they could every month come up with something new to buy that is not even our own standard. And to your point, we're having to pay because their budget went up. And so,
Or we do want to a certain standard. I mean, yeah, so I will.
yes, and I need to rephrase when I said a certain
No,
standard.
I agree with you, but.
I'm just saying, you know, we're depending on another government's governance standards
Exactly.
that we're helping fund. And to your point, it doesn't mean that it's bad or that we're not appreciative, but at what point what does that liability look like? Another point, though, talking about the multiple fire stations that Ms. Cersei brought up, we have to think about people's homeowners insurance. We've gone through a lot of that with our locality of where our stations are at or where they're not at, and how that has drastically affected people's homeowners insurance, and so that's another huge component.
So I could ask Dave, I don't think we want to bring him back between now and June, but how about if I put him on the February retreat? That gives him a good 6 months, sort of like when we started the trash conversations this time last year. It takes a while to gather the information and to get your answers. So I will ask, Sandra, are you making the notes? Put that in that file. I keep handing her a piece of paper, put in the file. So come next year, we know what we want to talk about. We're not trying to scramble to remember. So we'll ask Dave to come back and at least give us a better picture, because we're now probably 3 years into this too. So
Another thing we need to think about is, while I guess we have a good rating, Carrollton, I guess, has the top
Better rating.
tier.
Mhm.
So to their credit, that is being applied to our constituents' insurance. So there's a lot of moving components.
Yeah.
But I agree that overall, we need to look at
Yeah, I just think.
tightening up the language if we can.
And you come with the talent and information and experiences the rest of us don't have, so that would be great to see if we can get sort of up to par where you are, or you to see things that we might can change.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, the other increases as we go down are all things that the fire department's asked for, just a couple because we've just had cost increases in those areas like office supplies and non-office supplies. Utilities, we're increasing there. We're just seeing that running a little bit higher than it did last year. They've asked for uniforms for the GSAR team, additional replacement of turnout gear. The turnout gear is just getting more and more expensive, and it has a life on it, so it has to be replaced when it gets to end of life. So we're working on keeping all of that turnout gear in good shape. And then cost increase for EMS supplies. Safety supplies, we're adding some safety supplies for the investigators, the hydrant techs and some extinguishers. And then an increase for graduation, retirement, and assessment centers in that miscellaneous line. And then an increase for battery replacement and hand tools, investigative tools, just a small increase there. On the EMS increase, that's an increase tied to CPI plus the $50,000 that we agreed to do for the ambulance. And I think that contract will be up. I'm not sure if it ends in 27 or 28, but we're getting close to the end of that contract, so we may be getting ready to renegotiate that next year. Coroner increases were pretty small, just the salary and benefits there. The department at the bottom is something that we have not had on our budget in the past. So this ties back to the 911 budget and the funding that would need to come from the general fund to help supplement the 911 budget. So that's new this year. 800 megahertz telecommunication system. Major Dodson and Matt Klottfelter are kind of heading the wars up, and they have determined that WARS has been paying some expenses on towers that are owned by Carroll County, and they're wanting to move those expenses back to Carroll County because WARS is going to have to go up on fees, but some of the other counties are paying the maintenance on their own towers and would like to see Carroll County picking up the expenses for their towers like the other counties that are in the WARS agency does. So we've added $20,000 for that. There's also a need for some equipment. We're looking at possibly how we can. Right now, they think that they need a $10,000 transfer switch and $50,000 for a couple of UPSs, and we may buy those out of Splice, but we're looking to see if there's some options. They've got the generator maintenance company to come out and take a look, and they're putting together some proposals. So hopefully we won't need that money, or if we do, it'll be less than that. And this year, the WARS cost is not going up, but next year, I would say that we can probably expect an increase on that $216,000. Animal services, this is another big change in the budget. They've requested to have a full-time veterinarian. So we have put in the salary for a full-time veterinarian, and the benefits for a full-time veterinarian. Now, in doing that, we think that we can save about $40,000 in that medical services line. The drugs and vaccinations have increased, but we think that we can, well, we don't think, we will reduce the amount of part-time vet services that we will need. And then we're also allocating their internet cost back to them. They have asked for additional money for building repair and maintenance, and equipment repair and maintenance is, their building is aging, and their clientele is pretty rough on the equipment. So this is a pretty big change. We do feel like that with a full-time vet that we will be able to do more spay and neuters. They are also working with a not-for-profit on a way to get some spay and neuter services donated. They also think that they can offer low-cost vaccinations, which could increase revenue for the animal shelter. Even though we wouldn't make much money on it, we could make a little bit of money to help subsidize some of the other costs of running the shelter and animal control.
First of all, I want to say I think that they do an excellent job out there. I go by there periodically. They're always full individuals looking at trying to adopt pets and so forth, so I know they're doing everything that they can. Have we ever thought about trying to have, and I'm not necessarily big on consultants, but having somebody to come in and help us look at this operational budget, and that's no reflection on Christie, but we sit and think about much of the things that we're doing are reactionary. Spading and neutering, we hope, long-term keeps us from having to go pick up new babies that have been born and laying on the street, so I get that. But so much of what we're investing in is not necessarily the original call, but it's now we've picked them up and we've got them and we can't get rid of them. So I just wonder, here again, I'm not saying there's anything wrong, but just they're always at maximum capacity. I know Christie does great work. I know she works with other states trying to get people to take animals, so it's no reflection that they're not doing everything that they can. But this is almost kind of like, how do I say this, kind of a monstrosity, kind of how the trash has been. This is just blown up, and I don't know,
I think, we have these conversations all the time, is we're doing a lot with spade and neutering now. How do the kittens still keep coming? I mean, I know how kittens come, but at the same time, it just keeps coming and coming. And some of that is because we have people moving here, right? And I think this may still be residual of COVID. Everybody got a pet, right? But this is not just us. It's across the entire United States, which is even scarier when you start thinking about that. It'd be nice if it was just us. But, we've gotten this grant that we're going to we've gotten one person to purchase a puppy van, for lack of a better word. That we're taking puppies, about every 2 or 3 weeks, driving them north to different areas that request puppies because people want to adopt them. So we are moving them 25. It seems like you send 25 on Friday, and the next week 50 come in. And we've had some hoarder issues, things you don't necessarily know when you're driving down the street, but luckily the post office will mention something to us, and we go out there and find that somebody doesn't just have 5 or 6, they have 27. I don't know how we as commissioners can stop that part, but and then we also got a grant from the organization that's been doing the fundraising for us to work on a spade and neuter vehicle. and funding a vet for 2 years and taking this vehicle out into the areas we do seem to have a problem by trend or by seeing where the problems are, taking that van out there and saying, hey, we're going to be here on this day, we'll spay and neuter your pets. So I'm kind of like you were just saying earlier, Danny, we're not getting ahead with fire. It's kind of one of these things, this is another experiment sort of, is this going to at least keep us here? I would love to see us go to here, but is it going to keep us from going to here? So I don't have an answer. I know that she's constantly on these calls with others. It's another thing like ACCCG, when I talk to other commissioner, chairman, it's not unique to Carroll County. But I don't know how you tell citizens, please spay and neuter your animals. You know, I mean, I don't know how to. I'm sure she would love some direction on that too. But the fact that we've been able to get a grant of almost over $500,000 to help us over the next 2 years to at least 2 years worth of spay and neutering. Well, I would like to see it make a dent.
Yeah.
So far, we're just staying here. I would love to see the shelter, half full. That would be a great thing for us to be half full, whereas we're at full capacity, and it's coming from every district. It's not where we could just pinpoint one of y'all and point fingers and say, you're citizens, you're voters. It's all over, but by trying to at least take this vehicle out with this grant, I hope 2 years from now that we at least see us staying where we are or not getting any more. But
Well, and all those are great things. Another component that they deal with is and what we expect, just like when you pick up and call 911, you expect services to be there. I had a call a while back that someone was complaining about, the animal being picked up. I actually drove out, didn't get in the middle of the situation, but it was a big enough issue. I wanted to see it for myself. And they're much like our sheriff's deputies. I mean, they show up to a scene, something has happened, but the owner has gotten it, taken it back in the house. Well, then they either have to call a judge to say, give me a warrant to go in and get the animal, or they have to try to figure the situation out. So animal control is not just showing up, they immediately get the animal, and 30 seconds later they're gone. Many times it's almost like a domestic dispute
yes.
involving an animal. But in the same note, we get those calls and they're saying, well, why isn't someone here faster than they are? But knowing that the staff is doing all that they can, there's just so many moving components. And like I said, my comments are nothing negative about the administration or what Ms. Owens or yourself is doing as the chairman. It's just, this is something that has continued to masticize and take money. We're always at capacity, and she's done a good job of handling PR issues. They do a great job of helping market about. I have friends of mine that went and recently and adopted an animal there, so I know they're doing all they can. But I guess as a commissioner funding things, you still try to think, is there some magic pill somewhere we can get?
No, I appreciate the comments because, like I said, I'm hoping there'll be citizens listening to this, and you just helped educate. And then explain sometimes when a citizen says, why you pay that much for this. So I welcome your comments, and I guess my comments were to help educate the citizens that I hope are listening to this too, that yes, we're still trying as local citizens that are funding these programs and grants that we're going after. So yes, thank you for those comments. It was meant as a positive, so thank you.
If
And
we
I'm
add,
open to any more. If anyone's got any other ideas, Christy, we'll more than welcome them. Any journals that y'all are reading or any other conversations you have with commissioners when y'all travel places, we welcome every idea to figure this out.
as far as the breakdown on hiring the vet, do we have what kind of salary are we all talking about? What is it coming up?
120?
I guess my only concern, and it'd be a question for Christie, would be, the need for a full-time vet on staff. I don't want to be paying a vet $120,000 to just be, standing around. It's not.
Oh, no, I think this is spade and neuter and taking care of things. We have to lots of times haul animals to vets ourselves to take care of certain things that we have to by state law. So having a vet on staff keeps that other staff member from having to go to different vets. It also, we were doing more spade and neuters. So yes, Christy would welcome the opportunity to sit down with you and give you more specifics if you would like it. But this in her mind is a way to be future cost saving or to have a residual effect from it, a positive effect from it. So that's what we're learning from other animal shelters. Having that full-time vet has cut other, while this one line item goes up, these other line items either go down or stay the same. So this is what we're projecting. We're asking for this year to see what else can we possibly be doing.
And that's part of that medical services line. We're paying, West Georgia's paying neuter to do spay and neuters that we can't do at the animal shelter right now.
Okay.
And I think we will continue to pay them some, even though we will have a vet. I think that vet's going to be busy 40 hours a week, and we're still
Yes.
going to have to pay West Georgia spay and neuter some.
And I can attest to the vaccines and stuff going up. They've slowly crept it up on us over the past about 4 years. But I was looking at some old receipts the other day, and I was like, golly, when you total it up, it's like a 12% increase in 4 years. So.
Emergency management, no big changes there, just the salary increase and increase in health insurance. Public Works, we've got an internet allocation there that we're moving their internet cost to them. And then we're adding $2,500 in on the contractual services to cover the GPS tracking systems on the tractors. Asphalt, I increased. We continue to do work out for outside agencies, and we're just seeing an increase there. And I moved the culvert cost up and have increased that for the culverts to kind of match what we're doing this year on that. All right, the next page looks a lot different than it has in the past. This is a solid waste collection, so we moved all the trash hauling, tipping fees, and convenience center expense over to the budget for Fund 540 that we talked about earlier this morning. And then we're going to take $3,086,000 out of the general fund to subsidize the cost of running solid waste at this point. On DFACS, the health department advocates for remarkable citizens' mental health. We didn't have any increases. I have increased for the transit on vehicle repair and maintenance and gas and oil. Both of those have gone up again this year. And then none of the other line items have gone up except for the reentry program. They asked for an additional $4,000. They help to bring people who have been in prison back into the community and become productive citizens. So that's what that expenditure is for.
And let me kind of clarify that too. So these are citizens who lived here, their families here, they may have been they're in a prison somewhere else in the state of Georgia, but they come back home. So this is not, we're just not inviting people. I want to make sure I clarify. These are our family members, people's family members. And then also we have the Correctional Institute, and sometimes when these men are released, they don't have a place to go back to, but they've been here, they've been working in our community. So I just want, when you said that, Alicia, I just want to make sure people don't think we're just inviting any inmate who's been released back to our community, that it is directed more at what we already have. Did I say that? Maybe I made that more confusing. Okay.
Okay, now we're going to move into the recreation. we've got an increase in salaries there, and then we actually decreased that temporary labor in gymnastics because of not having those meets and not having people to have to work, extra people to bring in to conduct those meets. We moved the dance into an other category so we can kind of keep up with that separately. And then we've got a reduction in the cost of the gymnastics in the concessions because we're not having those state meets. We did increase the building repair and maintenance. We got some work that needs to be done at the Veterans Building, and so I think that they want to install some gutters and do some painting over there. So that's what that increase is for. Vehicle repair and maintenance, we actually took that down a little bit, and then publishing and advertising, we put up to keep the advertisements fresh for the rec department. We've seen, a lot of participation in the ads seem to promote that. Small increase in training, increase in contractual services, and then increase in office supplies and uniforms and supplies, and then increase in seed plants and seeds and fertilizer costs have gone up, and then an increase in computer equipment. They've got a couple of old computers that they need to get replaced too. So, and we didn't change anything on the allocation to the other rec departments. The parks budget, really, we've offset most of the increases with a reduction except for salaries. That's where the big difference is there.
What about, I know it'll be on septic, but like our restroom at the new Moss Ferry Park or the pavilion, if it'll have lights? I mean, and like I said, I know that'll be minimal, but have we taken into account anything with that new park coming online?
That's a good question. I'll have to look at that and see.
I know he's also going to have a good bit of signage and different things, which, I don't know if he'll expense that out now in current FY or, there's just a lot of things there that we need to figure out.
Well, we've got some money set aside for the capital part of that. So the building, the construction of the building, and I think signage is included.
Yeah, and I guess I meant as the park opens and you see things, here again, that should be minimal, but you're not going to think of everything when it first opens or things you may have to go back and add. So I guess maybe that's more where I'm coming from too.
Okay.
Outside of just the general fund utilities of the gazebo and, whatever else may be out there. Couple street lights, I have no idea.
Okay. The library line we kept the same. And then in the, at the Ag Center, a little increase in overtime just to help with some PTO coverage. They had a change in their insurance coverage from single up to family, so we had a larger increase there. And then increase in some retirement. A little bit of an increase in building repair and maintenance, and vehicle repair and maintenance because of the maintenance on the older Tahoe. And then the increase in the lease on the copier, and increase in non-office supplies, and a little bit of an increase in the computer expense.
This brings up a broader question for me, like on the maintenance on the older Tahoe, and I like how we conservatively handle things. We get everything we can out of it, but it might be good. We have so many vehicles if we're thinking long-term about is there a threshold of after you get a certain year and a certain mileage that you could get something, doesn't have to be brand new, but newer because the amount of money you're putting into maintenance offsets? We've just got so many different vehicles, to brand new, medium aged, 200,000 miles. Some of them only 50,000 miles, but they're 25 years old. I mean, there's all kind of fluctuations in the vehicles in our fleet. And I know that requires somebody to do that, and we don't have just people sitting around with nothing to do. But I'm just thinking out loud as we apply these to budgets.
We do have, Danny has unofficially somewhat taken that on. If y'all remember 2021, remember we couldn't find any vehicles, and y'all graciously agreed to a certain dollar amount to go and get as many vehicles as we possibly could from as many local vendors as we possibly could. So Danny maintains that list. I'm happy to send it to you. So every time someone kind of asks for a request unofficially, I ask Danny, because they're all still county vehicles, so they could technically move from department to department as necessary. So, but we really do evaluate these and see that we are being good stewards with our vehicles, but also we don't want our employees breaking down on the side of the road and stuff. So, yes, I can easily give that to you, but pretty much, if you think about it, every September, the sheriff's office comes and asks us for those new vehicles, so they kind of keep up with their list, and then we sort of keep up with ours. So,
And you're refreshing my memory, because it seemed like we brought this up a few years ago, and I remember Danny kind of going in and getting a better control countywide. So, and
So
like I said,
we've got that.
$500 in additional maintenance, that's not a lot, but it still jogs the memory of, is this something that's 15 years old and 250,000 miles? Not that they have to have something brand new, but at
Yep.
what point are we pulling the trigger on where we need to be putting in a new capital investment versus, lagging something along with continual maintenance costs?
I think we look at that. I think that's sort of Danny and I look at, at what point does this expense, because, they manage all the county maintenance, so we start looking and going, oh, this one vehicle's really having some problems. So, yes, I get that report, I think quarterly, and then when somebody starts to ask for a vehicle, we really pull it together and see who gets how the vehicle shifts down, where can we trade things with. So I think Danny has a real good, I'm not going to blame, I don't want all the department heads thinking, oh no, Danny's in charge, and if they won't give it to me, they're mad at him. I don't mean for that conversation to happen, but I rely on him tremendously because of, they do all our maintenance out there at Public Works. So I'm happy to get that sheet to you again.
Well,
I'm
I just
keeping up
want to
with
make
it.
sure someone.
We are
like I
looking
said,
at it.
And I'm glad, that's sometimes why we need to speak
Yes,
up.
yes.
Because we get reminded about things.
Yes.
So as long as there's some process in place, and it
Yes.
sounds like there is, I feel comfortable that we're just not waiting 10 years till we miss something, and then we're all scrambling to figure out, well,
Yes.
let's take a good big look at our fleet.
Yes, and I think with Danny coming on, I think from that last big purchase, we're trying to be more fluid. Like you said, you don't end up every 5 years with this gigantic bill of new vehicles. Trying to make sure that we are bringing them in and taking them out on a little bit more palatable expense than just boom, dumping it all on one time.
The planning and zoning for Three Rivers went down a little bit. That's based on population, and we increased that, and I think the population growth's flattened a little bit, so I felt like I could take a little bit out of that. Planning and zoning for codes enforcement, the big change there is the new software that ties into QPublic and gives them the ability to email plats and that kind of stuff. And then they're picking up the cost of some software that the tax commissioner had been paying for that she's no longer going to purchase. And then they got an increase in office supplies. The other line items, economic development assistance, debt service, and operate and transfer out, none of that changed. So that's the conclusion of the general fund budget, and the other two big funds, the solid waste and the 911 budget.
Alicia, can I ask you one real quick thing?
Sure.
Why would the capital lease interest, why would that not fluctuate from year to year on the debt service?
It did, but I don't think it has fluctuated enough
Okay,
to be $1,000 difference.
okay. Thank you.
I'll make sure, I'll check that and make sure.
So anything right this moment that you need for Alicia and I to provide you to make sure we stay on a timely thing with the budget and we're not scrambling out there, is there anything to right this moment you think of, other than what we decided with the other two volunteer services by 4 of y'all? Anything else that we took notes on? And if not, if you think of things, please go ahead and email it to us or call us. So we're not just dealing with it at the last minute, something that hits you. Please feel free to ask us so we can at least give you answers back to your constituents or to yourself so you feel comfortable when you raise your hand in June. Like I said, May 2nd, I'll present you a budget to be advertised. We have a public hearing. I can't remember those dates right this moment, but we will get them to you. And then how do we want to come back with these answers? Do we want to have another little hour meeting? Can we handle it during a work session?
Might
Well-
just handle it during a work session,
Okay.
or,
Yeah.
I mean, I guess
I
it
think
really depends on how much
Depend on
information
the
we have.
volume of questions you get.
Yeah.
Well, I know, but work sessions can also last longer than an hour. We're just very efficient with our stuff, making sure y'all get it in time and making sure that, the departments have, because I'm just looking at the calendar and I want to be assured that we aren't scrambling to find dates with the 7 of us. So our work session on the 30th, remember we start, earlier.
2 o'clock.
Yes, on the 30th, we start at 2 o'clock because we have the construction company for the sheriff's office, replacement jail, upgrades, whole title. So I don't know if that gives y'all enough time really to meet with these judges.
I mean, I'm not for constantly having to have more meetings, which we do a good job of not having to do that, but the budget itself being the primary funding tool for the whole county, I don't think it's out of place to have one more budget meeting to handle these. I mean, we've got PAC stuff coming up with looking at the general contractor for the new sheriff's facility and stuff, and at some point, we need to give the amount of attention we need to give to the budget. And if that lasts 30 minutes or it lasts an hour, I don't know, but that's significant to add on top of a work session that we've got starting at 2 o'clock one day.
Just want to make sure that's it.
I mean, that's just me, and I'm willing, if everybody wants to cram it all in one day, that's fine too, and I don't expect there to be a lot, but there's gonna be stuff as I go back, I need to maybe ask questions, and it doesn't necessarily have to come out in another meeting, but
Well, that's why I suggested, let's look at the volume of questions we're gonna have in the next few days, and then go from there.
Okay. But yes, I don't think that April 30th work
Right.
session's a good time to do that one.
It's not, I mean,
It-
I'm gonna be out of town next week for Savannah, so I mean, it's gonna really constrict mine and Montreal's.
So maybe I'm just going to throw this out there just generically, on Monday, let's see, let me go back to my calendar, because I think, Alicia, you and I had penciled some stuff in, just thinking if we did need something. I think Wednesday, okay, yes, Wednesday, April 29th, but that's 2 weeks from now. Is that enough time for y'all to meet with the prospective judges, get some questions by department heads? Is that a good time to schedule back?
if we did, it would have to either be first thing in the morning, like a 9 o'clock.
Yes.
I have an 11:30 standing committee I'm already working on.
So we want to say, does that work
If
for
it
this
starts at
group?
11:30, that I would have to leave by 11.
So we did 9 to 11, and like I said, we just finished this in
Right.
2.5 hours, and it was the whole budget.
Right.
Does that work for y'all, April 29th, to come back here at
does
9
for me.
o'clock?
I'm good with that.
Okay. So we'll just schedule that as the main topics being the two judges, salaries, or just not really pointing those judges out in particular, salaries of, of judges in general. What was it? I have to go back and look through my notes.
And one thing you were going to actually, whether we bring that back at that meeting or not, we were going to maybe ask all of the judges, are they looking at their
yes.
fee
Here it
structures
is.
to make sure they're current?
Yeah.
'Cause I mean, the state court, he is pretty, I think his last 2 years, he's been the number one in the state for fees or whatever.
So we want to see fee structure, bring back that day, and we're going to have a report of the two groups on the judge's salary request. And I'll double check my notes here and see if there's anything else, but we'll just plan on hitting those main topics, and then if there's something else y'all think of, if you please let us know ahead of time so we can come prepared with the information you need.
Looking at 9, you said? 9 o'clock, you said?
9 o'clock on Wednesday morning, April 29th. Okay? Sound good?
I do have one question. Can I keep this pen?
We're going to adjourn the meeting at this point, y'all.